Good morning, students. Today we will be dealing with the new chapter, that is resource management. Now, resource management is a chapter which will teach us how to utilize both the human as well as the material resources which we have. How to best utilize it in the best possible manner. So first of all, let us understand, what does the word resource mean? Resource means anything that is useful and helps us in meeting our needs. That means which will help us to satisfy our needs. The resources of a country, the resources of a human being are those essential things which is useful so that our needs can be satisfied. So in this manner, we can classify resources. Resources can be either man-made or they will be those which are used by the community as well as by the human beings in the form of money, material goods, etc. So we can classify resources as human and non-human. Human resources would be, I'll be explaining it in detail. Human resources will include time, energy, knowledge, skills, attitudes, while non-human resources will include money, material goods, property, community resources, and so on. So let us look into detail about the different resources that we have. So first of all, we'll begin with the human resources. So we can say human resources would include time. That is, time, as we know, is a very valuable resource in our hands. Because time is limited, and within this limited time, we need to complete a huge amount of work. So for this reason, we have to program or we have to make use of devices so that we can utilize our time in the best possible manner. Because time is never going to be unlimited. It is always limited. And within this limited time, we have to make use of all our best resources and at the same time utilize it so that a huge amount of work can be completed. Followed by this, energy. We can say energy can be both physical and mental. Energy is required and is got by a human being from the food that he eats, he consumes. I've taught you in the previous chapter about food and nutrition and how each type of food has a different role in our body and why we must eat it. Out of them, I've taught you that fats and carbohydrates provide maximum energy to our body. We will be needing energy for performing different activities like walking, cooking, bathing, and energy is consumed by the human body even when we are sleeping. Because as we have mentioned as has been mentioned and we have discussed this point in our previous chapter, that even when a person is at rest or sleeping, certain physiological functions will be carrying on within the body, like digestion, circulation of blood, etc. So hence a process of metabolism is always taking place. And when this process of metabolism is taking place, even if we are not working, that is moving around, then in that case energy is consumed. So energy is a big factor and is a very important resource, because without energy we cannot perform the different activities. So for good metabolism, the body needs to produce energy. And this energy is needed, which we measure it in the form of the basal metabolic rate or BMR. BMR That is, when you consume too much food and produce energy and don't utilize it, we become obese or put on weight. But on the other hand, if the energy consumption is more than the food that we eat, then a person is lean and thin. So this energy conservation by the human body is of huge importance. Because if a person doesn't get enough energy, he'll feel tired. And for this reason, the food or the nutrition should give him enough energy. Knowledge, we move on to the next, is another important resource. We must have knowledge, especially a housewife, of the different principles, of the different equipment she's using at home. She must know what all fabrics, materials to buy, and at an economical cost. That means at a cheaper cost. So for this reason, what we find is that knowledge is of huge importance for the human being. With a good amount of knowledge, we will know how to utilize our resources in the best possible manner. Abilities and skills. Each one has got an ability or is good at a particular job. A housewife, she may be good at flower decoration, she may be skillful at practicing certain types of cooking, while she may not be good at something else. Hence, we should always try to use the ability or the skill we are good at. So for this reason, to get the best possible results. Attitudes. These are opinions and feelings which can stimulate or retard an action. Very true. If we have a positive attitude or a negative attitude, we find that many times certain work which may be pretty hard for us, we easily can do it because we go with a positive attitude. While on the other hand, if we perform an activity with a negative attitude, then definitely we find that it is hard to reach the goal. And whenever there is a problem, we must not shy away from it. We should undertake it and try to finish it in the best possible manner or find a solution for it. That's positive attitude. But on the other hand, we find that if we have a negative frame of mind, then many a task cannot be accomplished because we are not willing to do it the way it needs to be done. So in this manner, these are the human resources that I spoke of. Time, energy, knowledge, skills or abilities. Now we move on to the non-human resources, which needs to be utilized in the best possible manner. Money. We find that we need money to buy all the material goods, property, food, for medical treatment, etc. And when we talk of money, we must remember that this has to be utilized, or we have to divide it in such a manner so that it can be useful for all, to satisfy all the needs that a person faces. This money that each one earns is not equal. It is earned in unequal amounts, and we have to see that money is available first for the most urgent needs, followed by the others. Definitely we have to keep aside money for good medical treatment and then think of buying clothes. So for this reason, for the services, for the goods which are more important, money has to be first utilized for those, and then for the others which are not so urgent. Followed by this, we move on to material goods. Car, TV, computer, our daily needs. So there's a huge unending list of material goods which we need to satisfy. And thereto, money has to be made available. We have to use money in such a manner so that it meets our needs to satisfy the material goods which are more important. Next, we come to the next point. The next non-human resource everyone thinks of is property. Property is a form of investment which we all like to do so that it will help us during our bad days. Property can be in the form of shops, if somebody has got a business, in the form of a house, bungalow, flat, etc. So property is something which is bought through money, because this investment definitely will help us or protect us during bad times. Next, we move on to the next non-human resource, community resources or facilities which are enjoyed by the whole society. We definitely don't pay our money for it to acquire or to get this community services, this community resources, but at the same time, indirectly, every citizen of the country has to pay for it through taxes. So community facilities which we generally think are free are actually not free. They are being provided to us by the government of a country, and the government is indirectly taking this money from us in the form of taxes. This would include maintenance of parks, hospitals, library, etc. by the government. Government schools, which are funded by the government again, are all a part of community resources. So now let us see, community resources, what we find is, are very essential, because this is a resource which is shared equally by all members of the community. Whether there's a demand for electricity, or we have to share electricity among all members of a society by making a payment. It's not that the rich will use more of electricity in comparison to the poor. So that is why the government goes in for load shedding, that is, the electricity is switched off in turns so that each area of the town or of the village is able to get it for a certain period of time. Next, we come to the public distribution system, which is in simple language called the ration shops. Through this, the government equally distributes kerosene, cereal, sugar to each and every member of the family. So this is again something which each member of the family gets at a subsidized rate. The basic necessities, fuel like kerosene, along with the basic food like sugar, rice, wheat, etc. And we find that everyone is allowed to use the facilities in a hospital, post office, public transport by making the same payments. The payment which is charged by the government is the same whether you are rich or poor. Next comes community tap water. This community tap water, what we find is, again, is equally shared by all members of the community. It is not that some will get more water while others will get less water. It has to be equally shared. So in this manner, these are the non-human resources which we utilize in a daily life. Now let's quickly have a look at some of the important characteristics of resources. All resources are important because they are able to satisfy our daily needs. And what we find is that certain resources we find are utilized more according to each one's needs. It is not that, it is that we can say in a simple word that the use of resources is subjective, meaning it varies from person to person and nothing should be wasted. These days, even the waste materials, many of it is utilized. Like after taking out sugar from the sugar cane in the sugar factories, the waste that is left behind, the fibers, are again utilized to make block boards, which can be used to make false ceilings, etc., in houses, in music studios, etc. The availability of money for each family varies according to the skill of that family, how much the family is able to earn. So for this reason, no family has got excess amount of money. It will depend on the skill that the family has. They are rarely used singly, the resources of the community or of the human being. So what we find is that all the resources are grouped together and then utilized. Managerial process is applicable to all resources so that the goals can be achieved, and proper management of resources must take place. Resources are limited, whether it's for a human being, for a person, for a country, everywhere resources are limited. And since resources are limited, we must not misuse the resources. They have to be utilized in the best possible manner. With this, today, we finish the classification of resources, that is into human and non-human resources. We will go into the explanation of the rest of the chapter in our next class. Thank you.